Should we just jump in?
Just, yeah, as soon as you feel like you've got something, just throw it in.
Cool. Well, so when I first heard of the online chapter, I honestly wasn't sure that it was going to bring much value to me personally. I was all about supporting the tribe, but kind of figured, oh, maybe I'll join like a meeting or two. I guess I didn't really see a point in like paying to just have Zoom meetings essentially. Um, Again, wanted to support the tribe, but like value to me wasn't really clear. But yeah, I think just after the first Zoom meeting that we had, I think I was just smiling so hard the entire meeting and like came off it just feeling so energized. And a huge part of that for me is that I'm an extrovert, so I get my energy from, people, and Andrew's laughing. Yeah, and so I just felt so good after that first call that I was like, I didn't realize that a Zoom call could like bring me so much joy.
I joined without really expectations. It was like, okay, let's support the tribe. It was way more like tight knit than I was expecting. A smaller subset of people made a big difference for me to kind of feel like, okay, I can still have some interaction without like the fire hose of notifications that most of the other channels in the normal workspace have. So having like a smaller subgroup ended up being a lot more valuable for me than I expected.
For me, I sort of jumped on it the second that I saw it come up. I had never been on a chapter before, so I was excited. It seemed like exactly what I was looking for, which was during this time, I don't have coworkers, I don't have like a regular schedule. So just having people to sort of talk to and keep me motivated throughout the day. And I was deeply disappointed. No, I'm just kidding. I was not. It was fantastic. It was so much better than I was expecting. I wasn't expecting to get that community feel right away, but it was just instant.
I've never been in a chapter before, so I just want to like know the people. For me, it's more like testing. I was like, let's see what kind of people are in the chapter. I came in more trying to figure out what it's all about, and yeah, I think I get it. I mean, even the first conversation we were talking about, this is the kind of people that I like to hang out with. So
there was a pretty interesting breakdown of people in this one too, in that you had like a third were like Wi-Fi tribe staff, a third were like really hardcore Wi-Fi tribe, kind of like long-termers, and then a third were like new people. Like that's a really odd split that made a really good combination here, in that the more experienced people could like guide the early days and get things up to speed a little bit more. Whereas that provided like the train tracks for, the newer people to kind of figure it out.
I feel like just like that sense of community and like playfulness that we have when we can all like get together in a room was, I don't know why it was so surprising, but surprisingly similar. The social interaction, I guess, on Slack, because it's still a lot. There's still a lot of social interaction online when we are together in person.
It was the same concept of getting people together and just kind of like giggling and laughing for an hour at a time. Like that didn't really change, and that's the core of the experience in a lot of ways.
But my personal question, again, never been in a chapter before, was the actual goals to actually like recreate that experience? It doesn't have to be a recreation, right? It can be a different experience.
Yeah, so if you boil it down, the point is really just to continue connecting with like-minded people, just who are intentional about spending time together, right? And that I think is the commonality that you'll find on a chapter as well. Like everyone's there for a reason. We've all decided that we want to be here and that we want to be here together. I think that's the major overlap. And then beyond that, you're right that this obviously does have to be very different. But what I think is important is that the community has to feel the same. Did it feel like there was too much going on, maybe too little, or did it feel more like the right balance?
The Slack groups were a little bit overwhelming for me, not having ever, like I've been on different Slack groups, but not ever in a like sort of this kind of capacity where stuff is just going on all day long. And especially a lot of stuff, since I'm in Australia, a lot of stuff was going on overnight. So that felt like a lot, but the activities, it felt like a good amount.
I feel like I have the same issues with Slack on like in-person chapters as well, where it can be really overwhelming in terms of how Slack has been working for the virtual chapter versus like the regular chapter. I think that it's pretty spot on.
Echoing that, Slack, the first like 3 or 4 days of a new in-person chapter is mayhem at the highest order. And then you figure out how to work with it. And then everyone figures out kind of the etiquette of it all as well. it actually felt relatively well contained for the most part.
What do you think is the ideal version of that then, or like something to counterbalance these big groups? Would it be small groups like us right now, maybe up to 5 people? Is it 3 people? Is it maybe just one-on-ones?
I really liked what we did for like the icebreaker, how you get to break out into like kind of like, I guess, more organized things with the whole tribe, but breaking out into like smaller groups and getting the opportunity to have like one-on-one discussions.
For me, I'm not extroverted at all, so I can definitely answer that question. I think the smaller groups were helpful. I know that the masterminds were intended to be more work focused, but I actually feel like I got the biggest social, like I got a social aspect out of that as well, because I was able to get to know like a smaller group of people much better, as opposed to some of the bigger group things. So that and the pub quiz we did as well. That was like a smaller group. I liked listening to a lot of the people who know each other really well kind of talk and seeing that community feel within the group. So not necessarily participating, but kind of seeing how the group interacted. That was pretty cool.
It's good to come in and then you all kind of know each other. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know that obviously, right? Like I didn't know you all kind of like really know each other that well because you spend a lot of time in chapters together and all that kind of stuff.
Diego, can I ask you what you thought worked well and what you didn't work well? I'm curious to see, from your perspective, what has jumped out to you from both sides.
I feel like, so obviously from the logistics, and I'm not even going to ask questions about that because that is a rabbit hole, and we know that on the logistics side, like, we can see what's wrong and what we have to fix. I mean, I'm obviously going to be biased now from our discussion, but I do feel that breaking the bigger groups down into smaller groups would have, with some format of consistency and regularity, would have probably been the one thing. Like if we could only change one thing, I would have gone back in time and changed that one thing. I think that would have made the biggest difference.
My feedback on the panel, I really enjoyed it. It was definitely worth staying up till midnight to attend. Well, it started at 11, so and yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I especially enjoyed the panelists. I thought they had good things to say, and it was like a good dynamic. I think it was challenging to ask and get answers that sort of were helpful without being able to give like a huge backstory and take up a ton of time doing that. What I would have preferred maybe to see more of is just the panelists themselves discuss. I think the topics, the overall kind of umbrella topic was great. And I think the topics that you had kind of laid out in the agenda were also very interesting to me.
Andrew, Amanda, you, Alyssa, you guys are getting very different things out of it, right? Andrew's totally like not on the growth side at all because he's doing his company thing. He has a lot of changes there and he can't invest into the growth right now. From your perspective, Amanda, it's very much on the social side. And then Alyssa, from your perspective, it's the accountability, right? Is quite front and central.
Yeah, absolutely. And having people to bounce ideas off of has been the best part for me. So
like the idea of like acceleration, inspiration, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Just getting feedback on projects, because I had a project that had been moving kind of slowly, just with the virus and me moving and traveling. I hadn't really moved it forward. And in the last week, I have moved it forward a lot.
And I'll be disappointed if you're not going to do this after the pandemic time, because like I've worked online for a while and I have colleagues. So I always have colleagues remotely, and I always have this like online community of some sort. But like obviously colleagues and this kind of community is very different. So this is kind of one of the things that I'm looking for. And yes,